This is the saga of Dayspring, kind of the family tree of my grandma C, I called her, because she lived by the sea, and her name was Crieghton. Originally she was an Archibald, but she married into the Crieghton family. Her pen name here is Helen Archer, but her real name at this time was Alice Crieghton. She wrote this when she was about 75. It was published when she was 81?
80.
Or 80, if you look inside. Nurse Co, my Aunt Margie, who's manning the camera right now. That's her company, published this in 1981.
Okay.
And on the cover of the book is the house where my grandmother grew up. William O'Brien Crieghton, who would be my great-great-grandfather. Susan Crieghton was her maiden name.
My father, John Howard Crieghton. Jean Crieghton Rogers.
Jean Crieghton Rogers.
And Aunt Jessie, who is...
Which one?
Jessie Crieghton...
Aunt Jessie.
Gillis. Aunt Elizabeth, that I'm called after. Elizabeth Crieghton Shaw.
Anne Crieghton Lane.
Yeah.
Like she became Lane.
Ruby Crieghton Stevenson.
Ruby Crieghton Stevenson, okay.
And this is Uncle Warren.
Uncle Warren.
Crieghton. And this is...
Who lived the longest out of everybody.
Yeah, 4 months short of his 100th birthday.
3 years ago he died. So that was the last of everyone in this picture.
Yeah, and this is Uncle Jimmy.
And Uncle Jimmy Crieghton.
Yeah.
And who did he marry?
Gladys Ross.
So that's the Crieghton's. So this picture was probably taken around 1910.
This is my grandfather, Samuel Archibald, and his wife, Ida Dunlop Archibald. Charlie Archibald, Uncle William Archibald, he was the one that was electrocuted when he was repairing the wires.
Oh, so he's called Roger in the book.
Yeah. And this is my mother, Alice Archibald Crieghton. And this is my Auntie Blanche. And she went married and lived in New Westminster, BC. She was Blanche McCrae. Her son, Linz, was in the Royal Canadian Air Force and was shot down over Belgium in the Second World War. And Margot and I tried to find his graves. We located it, but we didn't have time to go and see it.
Where was it?
In Belgium, in Brussels. And there's two other sisters, Nellie and Jessie, two older sisters, and they went out west in the, I don't know what year, maybe in the 20s or something, to teach, and they married wheat farmers, two brothers. The two sisters married two brothers, and they lived in Estevan, Saskatchewan.
Here's the Archibald Crieghton Wall of Fame.
Yeah, that fits. And Aunt Jessie?
That's John Howard Crieghton, my grandfather, going off to war. What year would that have been?
17. Jimmy?
And Aunt Jessie?
Train station in Truro, where my father was just leaving to go to Halifax, where he was going to sail overseas. That's in 1917, in the Second World War. And he eventually fought in the Battle of Passchendaele in Belgium.
Him here?
Yeah.
And that's Aunt Jessie there?
Yeah.
And here they are.
1917.
So, right, 1912, or 1910 to 1917. Oh, that's Aunt Jessie, who we just looked at.
Grandpa and Grandma Crieghton.
So that's Grandma C, my grandmother.
Your grandmother and your grandfather.
And again, that's who we just saw going off to war.
24, they were married.
1924, and where did they get married?
At the house, in front of the house. Dayspring house. Grandpa.
Grandpa's father, my great-grandfather.
Yeah, Crieghton.
Who's over here in the family photo.
And his mother.
So
yeah, my father's mother.
My great-grandmother, what was her name again?
Susan.
Susan, and she's over here in the picture.
Yeah. My mother, Alice Archibald, when she graduated from teaching college in Truro, which was called Normal College, and after you took 1 year of that college, you were eligible for teaching.
Grandma C graduated from St. Francis Xavier with her Bachelor of Education and Bachelor of Arts. According to this, Bachelor of Education was September 1970. And there's Grandma. This is St. Francis Xavier University. You can see some of the old cars there. Another one inside the school. The school in the snow, 1970 automobiles. Many congratulatory messages and cards. Here's my Uncle Neil and Judy. Here's the two grandmas. Grandma Dunn on the right, probably around the same year, 1970, and Grandma C on the left. Here's my dad with his signature Dunn finger on the forehead. My mom, Grandma C, and Aunt Elaine. Here's me and my cousin Tommy, Suzanne, and cousin Judy. Looks like it's in front of the fireplace at 340 Berkeley Circle. There's Uncle Donald, my mom's brother. Here's my grandma's membership card for the History Club.
From left to right, this is my mother, Alice Archibald, as she was then. And the next is Annie Wright. And the next one is May Piercy. We always called her Auntie May. And on the right is Nellie Wright. And so Nellie and Annie were sisters, and Nellie married David MacDonald.
So May Piercy, right here, was referred to in page 17 of the book of Dayspring as I made a friend for life and the mistress of the house. So that was May Piercy right here. And Nellie in the book is called Nora. And that's her sister who she moved in with later after this sister got married. These two sisters lived together all their lives. This sister never got married. She moved in with this sister the rest of her life. On page 8 of Dayspring, Grandma refers that my paternal grandmother lived with us in later years. She died at the age of 89. This is Margaret Archibald, who was married to David Archibald, also of Musquodoboit, and that's on Grandma's father's side, the Archibalds. Here's Grandma here. And which one's your dad on right here? Mm-hmm. David Archibald looks younger here than Margaret Archibald because there's a 20-year difference in the pictures. This picture was taken in 1890. This picture was taken in 1910.
But the groom is David MacDonald, and the bride is Nellie MacDonald. Remember we just saw
we were
that?
just talking about that.
And then to the right is her sister Annie Wright.
David MacDonald again, who married Nellie. And that looks like my grandpa. I think this is Grandma here. I don't know what that cabin is. It's left to right. Angus Gillis, who is Aunt Jessie's husband. Aunt Jessie was Grandma's sister. John Crieghton, Alice Crieghton, my grandma and grandpa. And there's her friend Annie Wright. You can recognize the railing and so forth. Right here. More pictures.
Don't get around the corner.
There's David Archibald, my grandfather's father, my great-grandfather, and the rest of the gang.
This is my father and his siblings, and left to right, that's Jean Crieghton Rogers, and then that's Jimmy Crieghton, and that's our dad, John Howard Crieghton, and next to him is Uncle Warren, and then Jessie Crieghton Gillis. That's my grandmother. That's my mother's mother. This is Ida Dunlap Archibald.
My mom thinks this is the same house before the veranda got put on. But the land that this house was built on was originally in 1786. The family owned that. The house was built in 1801. So it says the farm where the reunion was held was bought by Samuel Archibald in 1879 from the family of the late Wallace Archibald. Wallace Archibald had inherited the farm from his father Samuel Burke Archibald, who received the land in a grant in 1786. Grandpa John Howard's two sisters, Anne and Jessie.
Right.
1942, and this is Uncle Donald in the Air Cadets.
Yeah, and he joined up in about 1944 or something.
Did he fight in World War II?
In the Army, and he was just 16. He lied about his age. And he went to Halifax, and he was on
Look at the camera.
He went to Halifax, and he was on the dock to go overseas when they discovered that he was too young, so they took him out. So he transferred to the Air Force, but before his training was over, the war was over. So.
This is Ruby Crieghton, one of my grandfather's sisters. So here's Aunt Jessie's wedding with my grandma, Grandma C. That's Angus Gillis, so she became Jessie Gillis, and it's...
No, 1930. I wasn't born. That's Doug and Donald. I wasn't born till 31.
That's a boy?
Yeah, that's Doug, Uncle Doug.
Charlie on the right
Alice's brother.
And who's Jimmy and Kirk?
I don't know, friends.
So that's on the right is Grandma's brother, grade 8, Westville, Nova Scotia. Did you pass?
Of course.
Wait a minute, do you remember names of anybody else?
Oh, I probably remember. Oh, Doug might be in this too.
Here's Uncle Doug in the
there.
same class because he was
Tell her
sick
she wants to
and
go.
he missed a year.
She wants to go where? To this plaza with us because it's really. This is Lynn's McCrae, Auntie.
Don't move the page.
Auntie Blanche being my mother's sister. This is her son, Lynn's McCrae, who was shot down in 1944.
That's 1944 when the picture was taken.
Yeah, he was in the Air Force, and he was shot down over Belgium, and he's buried in the Brussels Military Cemetery in Belgium.
Oh, is that the grave you were looking for, but you
Yeah.
didn't have time to find?
Yeah. These would be Air Cadets.
So Crieghton Gillis, Aunt Jessie's son.
Yeah.
Was that the guy we had on the other page? Did she have two sons or one?
She had two sons.
Who was the other guy?
Angus,
Oh, Angus, and this is his younger brother?
older brother.
Older brother, Crieghton. Crieghton Gillis. This is my Uncle Donald. Yeah, on
Creighton's father.
the Archibald side, not the Crieghton side,
Yeah.
of course. Great old car. Lee Blanche,
Today's National Post.
who is
Kitchen on.
Grandma's sister,
Yeah.
and she was older by quite a few years. And this is 1943.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's her husband?
Yes.
And what was his name?
Lynn's McCrae.
There's Uncle Donald, 1941, Westville High School, same school that my mom and Uncle Doug went to in the picture we saw earlier. That's a great class photo.
This is Deborah.
Grandpa.
No, Mary Lee's not there.
Isn't that Mary Lee right there?
No,
on the
that's
floor?
Deborah.
Oh, that's Deborah. Boy, she ever looked like Mary Lee.
And Donald.
Don't press the page because then it goes back and
And
forth with the
Donald.
focus.
And
Who's that on his
Don
left?
and Shirley.
Is Shirley his wife?
Yeah.
So that's Wendy, who lives in Edmonton now.
Maybe
Here's
they're
Grandma
church
with
group.
some friends. Looks like a big hoedown party. Probably lots of drugs and alcohol. This looks like Mary Lee and Grandpa. Was that your truck? Do you remember that truck?
Is that a truck? Or...
Don't move it. So David, Grandma's brother,
Yeah.
older brother.
Yeah.
So David Archibald,
Yes.
and that's his daughter.
Yes.
What's her name?
I think that's Patsy Lou.
Patsy Lou.
Aunt Margaret and Uncle David.
Looks like Uncle Warren, which is Grandpa's brother
Yeah.
at a lumber camp.
Father, and he's supposedly one of the ones up here.
One of these guys
Yeah,
is my grandpa. And were
I'd
they
have to-
overseas here?
Yes.
Do you know what
I think
country? France?
Probably because that's where he was. Well, England, and then he fought in France.
He fought the Battle of Passchendaele, which was in Belgium, so maybe this is Belgium. This one,
No.
Uncle Donald had the long hair.
Uncle Doug. had
Or
the
Uncle
long hair.
Doug, he was in a rock band then. Here's Uncle Charlie, Grandma's younger brother, with their dog. In the book she said they named all their dogs Jip.
Well, that must have been Jip then.
So this was on the same property as the Dayspring house, correct? But it's not the same house. Is that right?
Right.
Now to totally confuse everybody, we're going to go to the other side of the family, the Dunn side of the family.
This is Aunt Ruby.
And how does she relate?
She's Mom's oldest sister.
Okay.
And Marguerite Patterson.
Her sister?
Yeah. This is Uncle Clarence.
And he's a brother?
Yeah.
Of those
yeah.
two sisters?
Yeah. Betty Hines, but I can't think of her husband's name.
Was she a friend or
A
relative?
very good friend, very good friend. Auntie Irene, and I'm not sure whether this is Auntie Irene because she was the youngest. And I'm not sure whether this is Uncle John, Mom's brother. And this would be Mom's youngest sister, I think, Auntie Irene. Dad and Mom, Grandma and Grandpa Patterson. Now I think
The mother
I think
and the
that's
father.
I think that's Aunt Ruby up here. Whether that's Uncle Jim, I'm not sure. Jim Donnell.
With the hat on?
Yeah, that would be Jim Donnell.
That's my grandma there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
This is West River, the actual river, in 1972, the year of the Dunn wear-in, with my Auntie Marion, who's not really a blood relative, but Uncle Barry was one of Dad's best friends from high school. That's her daughter Deirdre. And Mary Lee on the right. Crieghton Gillis, Aunt Jessie's son, who's not with us anymore, Suzanne and Mum. Okay, so here's another shot of the corner of the stone house and my grandma. So this is the house that my grandfather, John Howard Crieghton, grew up in. You can see from Aunt Jessie's book, like the detail over the door there is the same. And this is the back of the house in earlier years. Grandma C. Who's that beside her in the white?
I think that's a Crieghton. I don't know for sure.
So in the white is Aunt Jessie.
And I think that's a Crieghton too.
And how about in the front row on the
Okay,
left, Mary Lee?
right here is Auntie Gladys.
And so our Mary Lee.
Auntie Gladys,
And who's Auntie Gladys?
Jimmy's wife. Oh, well, that's Uncle Jimmy, yeah, coming this way.
Yeah.
Aunt Ann
Aunt Ann in the white.
and Aunt Jean
Mm-hmm.
and Uncle Warren.
So our,
Oh, and Aunt Ruby there. Uncle Warren, Aunt Ruby, Aunt Ann, Aunt Elizabeth, Aunt Jessie, Aunt Jean, and Uncle Jimmy.
who's missing?
Dad.
Oh yeah, John Howard Crieghton. It's
And there was one little boy that died as a baby, Frederick.
a continuation of Dayspring. I've been trying unsuccessfully to get the three sisters, Mom and Aunt Mary Lee and Aunt Margie together. And I thought maybe I'd get 2 out of 3, so we're down to 1. Aunt Margie left this morning and Mary Lee and Bruce drove back to Toronto after lunch. Page 35, the family had moved to Port Arthur to supplement their income. This is interesting, she was a broadcaster at the Fort William radio station telling bedtime stories.
Oh yes, she was on the radio and she told bedtime stories, and a lot of them she made up herself.
And we have those stories somewhere.
Do we?
Yeah,
Well,
I
we
have a
some
copy.
of her stories, yes. I have some of her stories.
Then your father had diabetes and a circulatory disease in his leg. Do you know what that was? A circulatory
Well, it was
disease?
just part of complications of diabetes.
The complications, got gangrene, got that first
Yeah.
leg amputated, so he had to quit working at the railroad, and that's what brought you back to Nova Scotia.
Yes.
Did you move in with the Strawberry King?
Yes, with the Crieghton, Grandpa Crieghton's. We
So-
moved in there.
So what was his name?
That's William O'Brien Crieghton. He was alive when Donald was born.
And you lived with him?
Yeah, when we came back from Port Arthur, we lived with him for maybe a couple of years. I don't know how long we lived there.
And then you got a hand-operated gasoline pump at the house?
Oh, then,
That passerby, so it was almost like a small gas station?
well, that was a business. Then we moved. We moved across the river, and there was the house there, and there was a little canteen and gas station.
Oh yeah, it says moved across the river from the ancestral home
Yeah.
to a little cottage. How come you moved?
Well, because it was a business for my father.
Oh, the ancestral home was the home with
Grandpa
W.O. Crieghton,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Strawberry King, and then I guess once Grandma got some
Yeah.
money together, you were able to move to the cottage across. So the ancestral home, that's the one we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, Grandpa's
That's
house.
not the stone house, but the other house?
Yeah.
So is
Okay.
that the one where your cousin where Ella and Catherine used to come in the summers?
Yes, when Grandpa died.
So when I was a kid, I remember going there and visiting.
Yeah,
It was a
they
big
bought
white
it.
house at that point.
And they sort of restored it or redid it. It was vacant for quite a long time, I think, after Grandpa died, and then they bought it. And then they lived there, and when they died off, Angus bought it, Aunt Jessie's son. And then Angus got married. Well, when Sigrid died, his first wife, eventually he got married to Sharon, who was from the United States. From Florida, she didn't like West River, so Angus sold it.
So Grandpa attended the gas pump.
Well,
What
it was
is-
on the main highway to Truro.
made like the general store beside it? That's sort of part of the
Yeah.
gas station general store?
Yeah,
And
yes.
do you remember helping baking pies and donuts?
No, that wasn't there. That was in Westville.
Oh, that was later?
Yeah.
An elderly neighbor was exactly 86 years older than our Eleanor. Is that you or Aunt Margie?
Oh, that was Granny Cox. That was me. And
So Eleanor is you.
yeah.
Okay.
And she was born on my birthday. Let's say she was 86 older. And this cocoa set in there, well, I have there, you know, the cocoa set, the pitcher and the 3 little cups.
It's sort of pink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a cocoa set, and that was hers.
Oh, that was my
Oh,
next
and
cool.
question.
She gave
So
it to
what
me.
was her name?
Well, we called her Granny Cox, C-O-X. They had a farm up the road from our place.
It says her legacy to Eleanor, which is really Marion, was a very old china cocoa set.
Yeah.
It's still a treasured possession in the home of that little girl, which is this little girl.
This-
So here it is, and we're guessing it's well over 100 years old. Some nice
I should
detail.
have it.
Whose brother is she calling Seymour that died, that got electrocuted? He
That
worked-
was Uncle William, yes.
Oh, and that's Grandpa's brother?
No, my mother's brother. Well, he was an electrician, and he was up a pole repairing something, and someone turned on the electricity at the station there.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, and he was immediately
Did
electrocuted.
the guy get fired at the station?
My mother got this phone call, and I think we had to go down to the canteen to get the phone, and she came up and she was crying. And she had just gotten the word of what had happened to her.
Mhm.
And she was very fond of her brothers and sisters.
Within a few years, we had a chance to take over a grocery store. And do you say Pictou or Pictou?
Pictou. Westville was the name of the town, and it's in Pictou County. It was
Okay.
a very bad move. It wasn't a very successful business.
How
'Cause
how
there's a
far away
grocery-
was that from the previous home?
Maybe 10 miles. I think I was in grade 3 when we moved.
Anne's leg was broken. Who was that? By boy.
Oh, that was
That must be Margie.
Margie, yeah. He was driving along the sidewalk, and his foot on the pedal hurt her leg and broke it. Or broke
Was
her
that what it was? As the pedal just came by, it hit her
Yeah.
like in the back of the leg?
somewhere. Hit her
You-
leg and broke it.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
You remember the pit bull that you had?
Oh, that was Skipper. I loved my dog.
You guys were like Surreyite bikers with a pit bull.
Oh, he was a lovely dog. He
And-
was my dog. Tot and Thomas were the cats. Apparently he bit somebody.
Oh, he did bite some.
And then they had to give him away, and they gave him away to a farmer out near Grandpa Crieghton's place.
Oh, she said boys used to tease him, and we were afraid he might retaliate. Okay.
But I remember I came home from somewhere, maybe it was the 24th of May hike we always went on. And they had given him away, taken him away without telling me, and I was pretty upset.
Oh, sounds familiar.
So-
Yeah, I never know if I did the right thing with Barney, whether you kids should have come with me when I gave him away. I thought it would be too hard for you.
I remember coming home and Mum was crying, but Dad was very allergic, so
We
it
had
was
to-
either Barney or Dad. So she started kindergarten,
Oh, yeah, she
in
had a
this town.
kindergarten in our house.
so that was in Westville.
Yeah. It went very well. I think she had 3 tables with about maybe 4 kids each. She had about a dozen kids, and I think people were very happy with it, and I don't remember why she didn't continue. Did she say?
Oh, well, she came ill with a virus that hospitalized her for 6 weeks.
Oh, right. She had an embolism in the lung, a blood clot in the lung.
Oh. And then after that, World War II started. Won a contest, a Save for Canada cake. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember I think she won a desk and a lamp.
Oh, it's a-
What's
a
the
table-
desk you have? Well,
things
we
like
used to
that.
go out and pick blueberries, I remember. And there were big blueberry fields up near the coal mine. And the old glass quart bottles, we used to go door to door and sell them for $0.25.
And then she said baking was never the thing I enjoyed most, but it was a wartime and everyone was doing his or her bit. I had a young girl to help.
Yeah.
That was you?
No. Charlotte McLean, I think her name was. Well, she was my age. I think she was in school with me, and I think she quit school.
How come you weren't helping?
Well, I suppose I helped in some way. I didn't help with the cooking because I couldn't cook.
So they turned out as many as 65 dozen in a morning of donuts. So she probably woke up really early to do all
Is that what she said there? 65 dozen?
Yeah. The proceeds paid for a piano and music lessons for the children. Do you
Yeah.
remember your piano lessons?
Yeah, we really wanted a piano, yeah.
Well, that's why you always wanted a piano here.